Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that are read for the last 40 years. So today I have my special guest. She's redefining the future of drinking, founder of To Be Honest Beverage and marketing mentor, none other than Miss Michelle Easton.
Hello, thanks for having me, Daniel.
Welcome, welcome, Miss Michelle. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have been in marketing and business for quite some time. Just a couple of years ago, we launched our To Be Honest Beverage Company, which is a non alcoholic functional spirit brand. So, one of the reasons, we're having this chat today is talk about the story behind how that brand came about. And so, I was really struggling with mental health and anxiety at the time, really using alcohol kind of as a coping mechanism. And so when I started transitioning away from alcohol, we started having that question of what do we drink instead? And that's ultimately how the product came out of this story, experience, problem that we were looking to solve in the industry. And then just considering my marketing and sales background in partnership with my husband, who has been in production and manufacturing for alcohol for over a decade, we developed this product. And that's ultimately been the last 5 years in the works for us.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Michelle. And today, let's talk about from anxiety to clarity how intentional choices change your life. Tell us, what was the specific moment of a straw that broke the camel's back that made you realize you could not continue living the same level of anxiety, and what that moment felt like?
So for me, I felt like alcohol was a coping tool or mechanism. And anxiety was something that I was experiencing, like I mentioned, approximately in the last 5 years. And so navigating the psychological, mental health aspects of what I was kind of going through. And so as I started assessing aspects of my life and deciding what parts of my lifestyle that I truly wanted to shift and change, it sort of felt like coming from the health coaching and fitness space, I was checking the boxes when it came to meditation and fitness and eating whole foods. But this alcohol component was consistently leading to lethargy, lack of motivation, just kind of feeling unmotivated to move towards my goals and model the type of lifestyle that I wanted to model in demonstration for my personal and professional life. And so managing anxiety kind of made me realize the ways in which I was choosing to not address the emotions at play and not deal with them. I just kind of wanted to sweep things under the rug. And so I'd say that the straw that broke the camel's back, or that moment in time, was being at home. My husband had been at work, and since I was a solopreneur working for myself, my time was, managed on my own, but he was getting home late at night and I had been watching a romantic comedy and drinking a bottle of rosé. And by the time he had gotten home, I'd actually finished the entire bottle, which was not something that I commonly did necessarily. And I never like to call myself sober because I don't feel like I was managing an addiction or disease at the time. But it was definitely an overconsumption that I realized wasn't contributing anything positive to my life. And so that was kind of the moment and the instant and the night that I realized that something needed to shift and change if I wanted a different outcome from my experience.
How do you personally define the difference between life driven by anxiety and life guided by clarity? What does it feel like in your day to day?
So, anxiety is really for me an experience of unprocessed emotions and not being able to manage those things that come up. As we experience life, we're going to have to navigate circumstances, people, situations that arise that we can't have any control over, essentially. And when we don't address those things, when we don't act proactively, that's a lot of times where that anxiety comes from. And then there are choices that we make throughout our day and with our lifestyle that continue to add to that anxiety, right? There are tools that we can use and there are ways we can approach our lifestyle to help improve that experience. And so shifting to that point of clarity is not only from the point of drinking, where it meant drinking is an intoxicant, it leads to mental impairment and makes you have less clarity, more brain fog, and inability to really like think critically about your circumstances and your situation, but also being able to experience more presence, more mindfulness, more intentionality, and be in the moment of understanding, of appreciation, of the emotion, of the environment, the relationships, the connections that you're building, whatever it happens to be at that time. And so that's kind of that movement for me from anxiety to clarity. It offers up the enjoyment, the embracing of experience in your life, as opposed to trying to wash over what's happening, as opposed to trying to push away or not deal with, not address.
What was the very first small intentional choice you made that started you on this path? Why was that one starting point?
I'd say in that 5 to 6 year range, I actually chose to start going to therapy. And that was a big change for me to start to address some of the underlying things. Now, as it relates to alcohol, that night was sort of the catalyst. And then I decided to stop drinking. So, as someone who doesn't really live in the gray, where, making choices in moderation isn't necessarily my strong suit. I tend to go full bore, jump right in. I'm 100% committed, or it's like a no go, zero game effort. So when it came to alcohol, I realized once it was impacting me that I needed to just cut it out. Now, I didn't set any parameters and didn't say, oh, I'm going to stop drinking for 30 days. I'm going to stop drinking for a week. It was just a decision to say, I'm going to stop drinking. I never put any time frame on it, any max or any like harsh parameters of saying that I'm never going to drink again, but it allowed me to just transition into this phase of choosing every single time I drank or didn't. So it became more about intentional choice than anything else, which is one of the things that we try to encourage wholeheartedly with our brand is not necessarily a sober lifestyle, but more so intentionality, mindfulness, the relationship with drinking that you have to be a yes or no, not just a habit, not because of peer pressure, not because it's just what you always do and that it's because people expect it of you, but I'm going to intentionally choose to drink or to not, and how to engage in that drinking culture and that drinking relationship. So that really set up the choice, the intentionality, and the mindfulness for me when I started making that transition.
Was there a deeper purpose of value you were trying to reconnect with your decided to make change? What was it?
Absolutely. I think I've always been invested in the longevity of my health, my well being, and my body. And I felt like I was representing that in a lot of different ways in my life. But this idea and concept of alcohol was persistent and was sort of going against the grain. So I think at some level, I really wanted to invest in my future self to the best I possibly could. But also at the time, I felt compelled to make that change and that shift because I wanted to model the kind of behavior I wanted to see for those around me. And I felt like there's no way that I could possibly change somebody else or even try to help or advise them in the direction that I wanted to see with their life going. But I do believe that if I can model the type of behavior that I want to see in my, immediate environment and then even on a larger scale at a cultural level and as a group, I wanted to be able to demonstrate that, and I felt like by choosing something on my own in my personal life, that allowed for inspiration for others to make those choices as well. So, I felt motivated and compelled on a personal mission level to change our drinking culture and have a positive relationship with alcohol or with alternative options that I wanted to see in our culture, in our society, in an environment, and then of course, on like a personal level for the family, with friends, with those surrounding me.
So tell us, Miss Michelle, your cocktail. What is the big difference from other cocktail that are now available in the market?
There's a lot of options coming onto the market. We're starting to see this overarching, what you would call sober curious movement. And the no to low alcohol category is growing and expanding. So you're going to see what are called RTD options, or ready to drink. That's anything in a can or bottle that you can just consume or pour out and it's ready to go. Our product is what you would call more of a spirit alternative, and so it replaces the liquor in your cocktail. So when you're crafting a drink at home, whether that's something simple like a couple shots of our product, soda water, squeeze of lime, or whether you want something more complex, a little bit more sophisticated, and you're mixing up a classic cocktail of choice, you would use our product instead of the alcohol. So the one of the biggest like unique selling points and distinctions of our product is that we combine both flavor, which a lot of non-alcoholic spirits simply mimic alcohol in some way, but we also offer a functionality component. So consumers are looking for that flavor and functionality when they're wanting to experience the beverages in consumption. And so our inaugural style focus has a hemp infused CBD. And that offers relaxation, stress relief, calm. From a science backed perspective, it's anti inflammatory and can aid as a sleep quality. And so we wanted to be able to give someone a positive experience that did not have any intoxication. There was no buzz related to it. There was no hangover, no after effects, but they got to have something just as flavorful, just as enjoyable from a drinking perspective in either an at home environment for a nightly ritual, or when you're going out to a bar and in a social environment. They can be just as fantastic as a cocktail, which is a lot of what I drank when I was drinking.
Interesting innovation, Ms. Michelle. And what was the most difficult intentional choice you had made? What made this challenging and what was the outcome?
Well, I think from a lifestyle perspective, when you remove alcohol, you are exposed to what to do with your time from a social perspective, from a lifestyle perspective, because alcohol is so integrated. I'm based in the US and specifically in California, and so much of our time is invested in, if you're networking from a personal perspective, there's often alcohol involved. Happy hour, you're meeting friends and going out. Celebrations typically include some type of alcohol for toasting or experience. You have drinks when people come over to your house if you're hosting. So there are all these ways in which alcohol are integrated into our lifestyle and into our everyday. And so when you start to think about either transitioning, cutting it out, or even just cutting back and drinking less, you start to question what you do in those environments. What do you drink instead? Should you go to that particular activity because it's actually a wine festival and it's centered around alcohol? And so, lots of conversations that I have with our community and with our customers is this experience of what we call FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. So, if they're not drinking, are they going to have the same experiences? Is it going to be as fun? Is it going to be as enjoyable as their social circles and environments have told them that alcohol produces? And then also, what are they going to do instead? What are they going to replace it with? What is that experience going to be like? Are they going to enjoy themselves just as much? And so when I made that transition, I had to be intentional about who I was spending time with, what environments I was putting myself in. And that actually just led me down the road more towards personal development and being attracted to groups who had different conversations. It became more about spending time with people who weren't centered around alcohol, but business growth, entrepreneurship, personal development, fitness. outdoor activities. And so it really just kind of changed the way that I started to connect with people and the way that I started to invest my time and even resources and attention. So that was a really big shift in intentionality. And that also contributed to the lifestyle that I wanted to build over time and into the future.
Miss Michelle, how did you rewire your brain to move from reactive state to a proactive state?
That takes time. I think that I'm still working on that. I really feel like I'm at a place in my life where I spend much more, maybe 75% of my time and energy in being proactive. So instead of just responding in a reactive way, being proactive about my focus, my attention, my activities, the choices that I'm making in business or personally. But that's taken, among the personal development side of things, everything from therapy to visualization exercises, self and, verbal affirmations, meditation practices. There's been a whole host of activities that I've done centered around either healing past trauma or dealing with generational experiences, even something as far as past lives. So I've kind of explored a lot of different directions in that world of personal growth that have allowed me to stop being so reactive, because I think we tend to stay in that reactive state when our nervous system isn't safe, right? It's not allowing us to be calm in the way that we handle situations. It's reactive. It's that flight or fight. It's being in the sympathetic nervous system as opposed to the parasympathetic. And so doing those activities and practices that have allowed me to be more in my parasympathetic, my calm, that quote unquote rest and digest, allows you to think forward, to think with planning. When you're in that state of reactivity, you're just responding as things come at you circumstantially or from the environment. And I can't say that the shift happened overnight, or I don't even know if there was a point in time in which I recognized, oh, we've made a shift. But it's little steps, little activities, processes, and times in which I can recognize when I'm being reactive and being aware of the state that I'm in and being able to shift and change that actively and consciously recognizing, okay, I'm having a physical and emotional reaction to this situation, to this experience. How can I shift that? How can I change that? And I think the more that you do, the less reactive you become and the more proactive, because instead of just defaulting into responding, now you're thinking forward, you're thinking ahead, and you're even positioning yourself to avoid some of those things that might have set you off in the past because you're aware of them. And I think it takes that awareness to even make the change. So if you don't realize you're in a reactive state, you can never make the shift or the change. And so choosing, moving away from alcohol was just part of a larger decision from being in that reactive state, moving toward a more proactive one.
Proactive indeed. And Miss Michelle, as you are redefining the future of drinking, founder and as well as entrepreneur, what are your short term and long term goals?
From a short term perspective, we're hoping over the next couple of years, we can really succeed in the direct to consumer space. So, our product is a 750 milliliter bottle. It's about 25 fluid ounces, and it does really well in a home bar environment. So, our goal is we already ship across the US, we're in many states. And so, our goal is to continue to grow that from an organic and a paid perspective, working through collaborations and all of the channels. And then from there, in the next 5 or so years, we want to be able to expand further for distribution. So that would be our B2B side. We succeed and excel in business partnerships with bars and restaurants. So anywhere that we can be featured on the menu has been a phenomenal place in which people have gotten to consume and enjoy our product. And a lot of the feedback we get from customers and clients is thank you so much for having something like this because I felt so uncomfortable or awkward ordering in a bar environment and not having a great option. Or when we have friends over, I'm not quite sure what to serve. And so we're really trying to fill in and fit that need of each individual. What we try to say is being the main character of their drinking story and not just being sidelined or the back burner. So, long-term goals is to get to the point of national distribution for grocery, retail, bar, and restaurant with a distributor and partner. And, eventually, hopefully, international distribution. Right now, we're still just within the United States. And I think that's great for the next few years. But we really want to grow the presence and the community behind, to be honest, Bev, and find those folks who want to change their lifestyle and start to make more intentional choices. We're a very purpose driven and mission driven brand in that way. And so finding the community who is seeking out elevated, sophisticated options for consumption is a big part of our goals, is just kind of building that following, building that traction over the next few years.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Michelle, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Find something that you're passionate about. You don't necessarily have to do it as a business or make money from it. I don't think that people should just follow their passion from a career perspective. I think it's really important to balance and figure out a business model or a career that is going to fulfill your monetary need from a lifestyle perspective. But I will say, as much as you can find the interest, the passion, the purpose of what you're doing, I think it's much more fulfilling in the long run to invest in those things. So that's from a professional perspective and an entrepreneurial perspective. Consider the business model and be smart and intentional about what it is that you're looking to accomplish, whether that stays at a local level or whether you want it to scale and grow over time. Being thoughtful about the approach because that'll completely change your product, your service, your offer, your positioning, your branding, your marketing as a whole. And then personally, when it comes to intentionality and mindfulness and choices, to take it slow and really give yourself grace. So often, and coming from the health coaching and the fitness world, I worked with a lot of clients and a lot of people who felt either embarrassed, guilty, or ashamed when they wouldn't work out as much as they were supposed to, when they wouldn't eat the right way, when they were compromising to some degree or had missed out on something. And so, if you are making a choice in your life to cut back on alcohol, transition away from drinking, or start to make alternative choices, there are going to be times when you either slip up or go back on your word. And you have to be able to give yourself grace through that experience and know that it is small steps. It's maybe one epiphany moment, but it's the amalgamation of choices over moments, days, weeks, months, years that really make the true transformation, that point of growth, and to get you to that point where you can reflect on where you've been and say things have changed for me. So giving yourself that grace and knowing that it is a process.
It's a process indeed. It's not just like 1 minute. Success will come to you. And Miss Michelle, thank you for that advice. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. One actually that I think is really powerful for the conversation that we've had. It's called 90 Seconds to the Life You Love. It's by Dr. Joan Rosenberg. And ultimately, it's about giving yourself permission to address and feel emotions. And so she highlights the 8 core negative emotions and speaks to anxiety specifically in here, as it relates to our conversation and the experience that I've been through, which anxiety, kind of like I mentioned, is the inability or the process of ignoring and not managing or dealing with your emotions. And so in this book, it's proven from a neuroscience perspective that it takes about 90 seconds to move through the experience of that negative emotion. And if you can do that and process the emotion as opposed to avoiding, neglecting, trying to push away, dampen, just be rid of the emotion, then you can more more likely and you can more intentionally move towards change, move towards growth, move towards confidence, move toward the goals that you're working on. And so, just it being a part of the conversation of I found alcohol to be that coping mechanism and using tools to distract me from the emotions that I was feeling. And that was ultimately likely creating a lot of the anxiety that I was experiencing. And so this book really enabled me to just kind of change the lens and change the perspective of managing emotions, being able to handle circumstantial or environmental things that came up, kind of again going from that reactive place into that proactive place instead of feeling reactive and expressing those negative emotions that came up. How can I process? How can I deal with them? And how can I shift, change, and move through it so that I can get to the other side?
Thank you for that recommended book, Miss Michelle. And tell us, what role did community therapy or mentorship play in supporting you through this transition? Was it a solid journey or a supported one?
Oh, it's been a greatly supported one to some degrees, but it's also going to be a solo journey. I mean, we're each operating to some degree in isolation, right? We have our own consciousness, subconsciousness in which we're navigating the world with, and we're moving through our experiences and making choices and decisions on our own. At the end of the day, the buck stops with us, whether that's business, life, personal, body, everything. We have other people who are affecting us, who are advising us, who make choices maybe for us to some degree, but we still ultimately are the ones that everything is comes from and dictates. So, I've had great mentorship from business mentors, people in the spiritual space, people in the health and wellness space. I've joined masterminds and larger groups. I have, community groups of entrepreneurs and social groups, and so I think you have to have both. You've got to rely on community. You've got to invest in other people. There's a great opportunity for accountability, for advisement, for, being pushed and nudged in the right directions when sometimes you don't know where to go. And so relying on other people is a very healthy part of the process, and building those relationships will push you and propel you forward. But you also have to be thoughtful about your own fortitude, your own resilience, your own sense of self, knowing that you are the one who are making those choices. You are the one who gets to be mindful. You're the one who makes all of the decisions in the direction that you want your life to go and the way that you engage in your life.
Miss Michelle, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review, Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Michelle, how do you see this relationship between choice, anxiety, and clarity evolving for you in the future?
I think that I've built a really solid foundation up until this point and feel confident and grateful with all I've been able to do. And so I just continue to see it growing. As an entrepreneur, I feel like we're pushed in a lot of different directions and pushed to grow, outside of our comfort zone. And so I think it just continues to be the next level, the next opportunity, and continuing to see myself grow in the places that maybe I had stagnant belief systems or stagnant perspectives on the way of the world, and allowing myself to get out of those places more and more and more, instead of building up walls and building up excuses and building up places of, saying no and shutting down the opportunity that is in front of us. So I see that relationship moving further away from anxiety, not to say that it never arises, but moving further away from that into a place of clarity where you start to release the noise. You start to get rid of the distractions. You start to cut down the demands and the pressures from the external world, and you start to have more focus. You start to have more desire for what it is that you want and really formulating that. And I think that's something that's developed in the past year for me, especially, is really deciding on the clarity of what it is that I want from my life, from my business, and where I'm headed. So I only continue to see that narrowing as opposed to expanding with all of the potential opportunities, because I do know as a solopreneur and as a business owner, there are so many opportunities that we're presented with all the time, but it's a lot easier for me now to say, okay, those are distractions, and now I'm going to stay focused in this lane. So as I move forward, I just see more of that focusing.
Miss Michelle Houston, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your product, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. You can find us in that, to be honest, Bev, digitally and online, all social media platforms and the website. So I just appreciate this time so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Michelle Houston because if you support her, for sure, more and more, to be honest, to become. So, Miss Michelle, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
More to come, people. See you